First of all, thanks for coming in. I won't hold you that long. A few questions for you. What percentage of the fish of Europe is caught in Irish waters?
Deputy Fitzmaurice, Anna will look for that, and maybe I'll take her second question while she's looking.
You talked earlier, and I was just looking up stuff on it. Is the Marine Bill or Maritime? The Marine Bill.
Protected Areas Bill,
yeah.
perhaps?
There is going to be twice the size of our land mass here in this, our land in this country, being designated by 2030. Is that correct? 30% of all marine waters by 2030 is what's being proposed. There is 2 sites going to be designated, as my understanding, of 3 billion hectares. What effect is that going to have on fishermen, on fisherwomen, fisher people?
Okay. I suppose, Deputy Fitzmaurice, the first thing is that the designation of marine protected areas will fall to the Department of Housing as it currently
I know that,
stands.
but I presume that, like, with all due respect, I've heard you earlier on in your submission, but I presume in all of these things that the submissions put in by your department of the consequences of some of these actions that is about to come in the next few years and between now and 2050, the consequences for the fishing industry and as well as that offshore wind will be affected.
Yeah, I think without the specifics of where you're going, what we do, and it is, I suppose, important for our industry, I think a lot of these new designations, there's a lot of lack of information in relation to fishing and where it happens in the eyes of some others. So what I would say is some proposals, and I'm not speaking to any specific MPA proposal, but it's important that anybody proposing to designate an area understands the impact that may have on traditional fishing grounds, whether it's a spawning ground, whether there is a misconception out there that all fish move. Nephrops don't move, scallops don't move, they live in the soft sediment. So if you put something down on top of them or designate an area, they're not going to swim off and go somewhere else. The information that is provided in relation to fishing activity will be key to making any of those decisions. But those designations have to be considered in the context of the National Marine Planning Framework. And as you know, when I said it in my introductory remarks, it is very much specified that you should avoid, minimise or mitigate your impact on fishing. Coexistence is absolutely key, and I think the interests of the seafood sector, who have been fishing for much longer than many of these new concepts, has to be taken into account. But equally, the information that informs that is much better when it comes to larger fishing vessels and off the coast. Where there are data gaps is near shore for the inshore vessels, and that is proving challenging. But we are working with them and with the Marine Institute to try and look at better ways to present that data.
Would it be concerning to you if one of those are proposed designated areas, which I'm sure you are well aware of, is off, we'll say, the northwest coast, up where Oireachtas is, and another one down off the southeast coast, that there's 3 billion acres being proposed, if you were to put it into land, 3 billion, hectares, would you be alarmed if 30% of our area is going to be basically protected? Would you be fearful that that would have an adverse effect on the people that fish the areas?
I think, Deputy, you'd have to consider what it is that they're trying to protect. That may not preclude coexistence. It may not preclude fishing, depending on what it is that's been trying to be protected. But naturally, any actions that reduce the capacity to fish are concerning. But the activities, both that you mentioned, specifically the marine protected areas and the offshore renewable energy, they are also government programme for government deliverables, their government policy, and we need to work with all stakeholders in trying to deliver that in a way that impacts least on fishers.
You didn't get that figure yet, did you? Or?
I have, Deputy, yes.
Yeah, thanks.
So we published a fisheries fact sheet there in 2022. The Marine Institute and the Sea Fisheries Protection Authority provided the data for it, and I can provide a copy to the clerk to circulate to the members. So in terms of tonnage, now this was based on figures, as I say, up to 2022, around 530,000 tonnes of quota species are caught in the Irish EEZ.
Out of how many, what's the total, and you say what percentage, say with all the different countries coming into our waters, what's the percentage?
That is the total amount of species that are caught. That would be both by Irish vessels and non-Irish vessels.
And what would that be in percentage to all caught around Europe?
I don't have that figure, but there was a lot of work done in the run-up to Brexit on the various, the amount of fish caught in the various EEZs, we say between Ireland and the UK. We have that available, and I can forward that on to you. I think that will probably cover it. If we don't have it, it's something we can probably check with the Marine Institute. They'd have those figures. Okay. Because what I have here is what's caught in the Irish EEZ, and it's not comparing it to an overall EU figure. But I think we do have it available.
Okay. So as I say, I'm not going to go saying I'm an expert on fishing, but when you talk to fishermen, paperwork, no more than probably in all sides of it with farmers and all, the amount of paperwork that's involved is one thing that you'll hear. And a question for you then, there is a scheme there where some people were offered where they could basically cut up their boat. Why are we going down that road? You know, like when you look at the stats of the amount of people or the amount of boats that was in Ireland 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it's an industry that is going, for someone to look at it from the outside, it's going with less and less numbers of people involved in it, which isn't a good thing, to be quite frank about it. Is there anything to try and make us more proactive in getting more people involved in it, not giving them money to cut up a boat and get out of it?
Thanks, Deputy. I suppose, first of all, the scheme that you spoke to was the whitefish decommissioning scheme, which was a proposal of the Seafood Task Force, which consisted of industry members and other stakeholders, and that was one of their suggestions and proposals to the Minister to deal with the impacts of Brexit, to reduce the number of vessels in the fleet, so that less fishers would be trying to catch a reduced amount of quota. So that scheme itself, the decommissioning scheme, was a proposal by industry, and it was delivered on by the Minister. The second question you have is in relation to the change in profile in the fleet. I don't have stats with me, but I suppose what is interesting is in terms of the type of vessel in our fleet. And if you'd like, there is a fleet report done annually that will give you the changes over time. And I think we may have actually provided that in one of our previous attendances. The next question you had was on introducing new members to the industry, I think. And again, we do have what's known as a young fisher scheme, and that is designed to assist new members into the fishers under 40. And I'm dealing with this from memory, but I can send you a detail of the scheme.
Do you get many each year?
I don't know the answer to that, but I suppose I can find that out if you like. And I suppose it gives them up to a value, I think, of 250,000 to contribute towards the purchase of a vessel in order to fish, and I think that's quite a significant incentive for some to enter the industry.
What about the paperwork?
I suppose, like a good civil servant, I need to know which paperwork, because there's lots of paperwork.
From what I'm hearing from people out catching, basically, when they land at the dock or land at the harbour, the amount of paperwork that they may be required to have is basically, you know, getting on top of some of them, no more than in farming, the same thing. And I'm just wondering, where does all this come from, or where does all this, is there is there any way the EU at the moment, for smaller farmers, even though the size they're gone, it's not going to make any difference in Ireland, but it might help some of them in other parts of Europe, they're saying they're going to reduce penalties and reduce paperwork for a certain cohort. In my opinion, they should rise it up a way more. But is there anything like that coming from Europe, that they're trying to make things more attractive for people to stay at?
Well, I think maybe to take to your first area of comment, obviously there is an obligation on fishers who land fish, particularly those who wanted to go into the food chain and on for human consumption. So there's all of those requirements, which are a combination of the the control regulation, but equally then food safety issues. So that's paperwork that must be done. As far as I'm aware, and again, this is not something that I can speak to directly because the SFPA look after the control side and food safety, there is, I suppose, a certain amount of digitalisation underway, and that's only going to increase across a number of departments. I think what you might be referring to is the simplification under CAP, and I can't speak to a simplification under the Common Fisheries Policy, but I suppose it's something that could be written to in relation to the current evaluation that's been ongoing on the Common Fisheries Policy.